much for joining. Welcome to the Pollinate Potluck. My name is Ariel. I am the Chief Convener with Pollinate Impact, and you're joining the session More Than Money. This is a dialogue between incubators and funders on how we can unlock more non-financial support, because money is important, but there's more to it than just that. If this is your first time at the Pollinate Potluck, this is our launch series of Pollinate Impact, which is a member-led network of impact incubators and accelerators across the Global South. We empower and resource impact incubators across the Global South to collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing people and the planet. So this series is really to give you a snippet of what's in store at Pollinate Impact. And this is a series of conversations that we're putting together to understand some of the most important issues, to dig into some of these specific topics with incubators, accelerators, funders, and then other partners and allies, so that we can really hit the ground running as we launch this network and continue to move these conversations towards actions to really build an enabling environment and a real build out the industry for impact incubation globally. So we're really excited to have you all here. So this is our last week. We have a couple of sessions left this week. So we don't want you to hold back. We really want to see a lot of engagement from our participants, and we're really excited about this conversation. This topic actually came up last week around the importance and the realization that funders and donors really do want to support beyond just the money. The question is, how do we really tap into this, and how do we unlock and engage that? And sometimes you need to know what to ask for, because that we can't expect that the donors know all of the time how they could best support ESOs and incubators and accelerators. So really excited for this conversation. And at Pollinate Impact, every time we start a meeting, we like to do a check-in question to level set and see where everyone's at. So I'll ask Shami to push out that quick Mentimeter poll, and we'll put the link in the chat. So all you'll have to do is click on the link, and Tessine, if you can help me out with that. Perfect. So you just click on that Mentimeter link, and that will open up the poll. So what we really want to know, and I think welcome to the speakers to also contribute to this, but apart from money, what other kinds of support can donors and funders offer to advance your work as an ESO? So as an incubator, as an accelerator, as an entrepreneur support organization. You can put in a word, a couple of words. Awesome. Networks is coming up. That's fantastic. Yes, technical assistance. We know that a lot of funders and donors have vast networks and probably bigger than the ones that we as individual organizations have. Connections to partners. So great. We're seeing a lot of sort of themes around making connections and accessing networks, endorsements, a seat at the table. I love this. This is fantastic. So I think we know that the money is important, but a lot of the sort of intangible things are difficult to measure sort of that worth when it comes to thought leadership, when it comes to amplifying your voice, when it comes to having that seat at the table, and when it comes to making these connections with whether it's other funders, other partners, things like that can just be incredibly valuable. So thank you so much for that. Then we want to go next to, we just want to know who's in the room and where everybody's coming from. So we want to know what country you're joining from. I know for Priya in Southeast Asia, it is getting super late. And I know for Bridget in the US, it's super early, and it's super late for Pong also in China. So thanks to everyone for joining at all hours of the day. We know we have a lot of a big diversity, and somebody's either getting up early or staying up late. So thank you all for that. This is awesome. Our session earlier today was all sub-Saharan Africa. So I think I should put Kenya in there just so that we have some Africa representation, but fantastic. It's really great to see that diversity. And then the next question on the poll is, we just want to know what types of organizations we have in the room. Do we have funders? Do we have incubators, accelerators? This will really help us and our speakers kind of tailor their well, not tailor their insights, but really help guide the conversation so that we know. So yes, a couple of incubators and accelerators. Unsurprising, great. Some funders, donors, any academic institutions, consultants maybe? Okay, some more accelerators. Okay, perfect. So that's exactly the audience we want to talk to, and that we want you to also speak to us. We don't want this to be a one-way conversation. So please feel free to contribute at any point. You can put your questions in the chat. And we really welcome your participation, your questions, your thoughts, your experiences. If you have other ideas to share or experiences that you want to put out there, please do. So joining us today, we have an all-female panel, which I am super excited about, which was, I'll say, slightly accidental, but that doesn't matter because it's still fantastic. We have Rachel joining us from the DRK Foundation. Rachel's joining us as sort of a dual moderator cum funder, so she'll sort of share both perspectives. We have Priya from Vilgrove, Philippines. We have Bridget Helms, who's joining us from the Miller Center in California, and we have Peng, who's joining us from the Bayer Foundation, all the way from joining us from China. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Rachel, Priya, Bridget, and Peng to quickly introduce themselves, and then I'll let Rachel take us through the next segment.
Thanks so much, Ariel. So excited to be here and to help to moderate and facilitate this important discussion. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel McCauley. As Ariel mentioned, I'm a principal at the Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation, commonly known as DRK. We are a venture philanthropy organization headquartered on the West Coast of the United States, though I myself am based here in Nairobi, Kenya. We invest in early stage social enterprises globally around the world and have a growing portfolio here in Africa, which is exciting, but primarily focused on scalable enterprises that are focused on impact and are post-pilot pre-scale. So I would love to turn it over to my co-panelists. We have an incredible conversation lined up. And let me pass it over to you, Priya.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And hi, everybody. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for joining from wherever you are. I'm Priya Tachdi. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Vilgrove, Philippines. And we are a gender smart incubator that is headquartered here in Manila, but supporting startups here in the Philippines, but also broadly across Southeast Asia. And we fund and mentor early stage impact enterprises, businesses that have a direct social or climate impact. 85% of our portfolio are women-led, and that's intentional. And we are very excited. We are quite a young incubator, only 4 years old. So, excited to kind of share what the journey has been engaging with donors so far. Let me pass it to Bridget.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from almost sunny California. It will be soon, as soon as the sun comes up fully. Right. So my name is Bridget Helms. I am executive director at Miller Center for Social Entrepreneurship, which is really the original, or one of the very original, social enterprise accelerators. We've been around for 25 years as a center and 20 years as an accelerator. We focus on two main impact themes: women's economic power and climate resilience. We're very focused primarily on the people aspects of climate, so looking to support those who are the most vulnerable to climate change. Our focus is relentlessly impact first. But we also looking for scalable and viable business models. We have accelerated more than 1,400 global entrepreneurs around the world in 100 countries. We have a very great relationships and partnerships with all of the people on this panel, including a lot of DRK investee companies. For instance, our Miller Center alumni. We've worked with Vilgrove quite closely, especially more recently. And we're also looking at partnership with Bayer. So it's really exciting to kind of be on this panel, because I believe that the partnership piece is really crucial to what we're discussing today. I just want to say a few things about myself. So I've actually been working in this space for a really long time, and nearly 40 years now, and in one way or another. And I've been on both sides of this table. I've been a funder, I've been an investor, and I've been looking for funds. So I feel like it's an interesting conversation to have, to make sure that whatever that we're doing together as partners is adding value ultimately to the social entrepreneurs that we're all trying to serve, because that's the most important thing, to focus on that ultimate impact.
Absolutely. And to echo Bridget, we intend for this conversation to be helpful across the board. So please, to our participants, don't hesitate if you have any insights to share, questions as they come up. Pang, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to catching the ball from Bridget from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Hi everyone, nice to see you. Very happy to join the panel today. My passion for social innovation goes around the clock, 24 hours, obviously. So my name is Peng. I'm the director of social innovation from Bayer Foundation. It's Bayer's corporate foundation, headquartered in Leverkusen, Germany. But we focus on social entrepreneurs and how to support social entrepreneurs in global south since the last 5 years. So we're traditionally focusing on sub-Saharan Africa, and the mandate for growing geography in APAC and Latin America is something new starting this year. So very exciting journey ahead, and we're also looking for different partners to join for us, in especially expanding our portfolios in APAC and LATAM region. So our vision is to catalyze advances in social innovation for health for all and hunger for none. So you can see that half of our portfolio covers health, half of them covers food securities, and of course we are more emerging into the intersectionality between food, health, and also the climate topic. Gender equity and women economic empowerment is also a very big topic for us, very deeply in our heart. For this, we also run our own accelerator, apart from the funder side, supporting female entrepreneurs in the global south to scale their innovation. Yeah, so a lot of exciting opportunities ahead. Yeah, very happy to join today's session and looking forward to the discussion here.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies, so much. Would love to kick off this conversation, starting off with the incubator perspective. And so just want to clarify that we're defining incubators as incubators, accelerators, venture builders, and enterprise support organizations as a whole. So Bridget, at the Miller Center, you guys have accelerated more than 1,000 social entrepreneurs over the last 20 years. And to your point, many of them are DRK entrepreneurs as well. And you focused on ending poverty and protecting the planet. Mm-hmm. What kinds of support have you received from your funders that was more than money to advance this vision?
Right. Well, thank you for that. So I think it's really important to distinguish between different types of funders, right? So we at Miller Center, our budget is covered. A small amount of our budget is covered by the university itself. So obviously we get from the university, we get our office space, we have a lot of back office support, all those kinds of things, because we're housed within that funder, if you will. So we're at the University of Santa Clara, which is Jesuit University in Silicon Valley. So that's one piece. The other piece is individuals and high net worth individuals, family offices. Most of the rest of our funding comes from that type of source. Many of those people have been mentors. Miller Center has a massive network. Really, I don't think unparalleled and unfortunately very difficult to replicate network of nearly 400 executive mentors. Most of them are here in Silicon Valley, but not all of them. They're all around the world now. And so many of those mentors become funders, or they're donors, and we realized, oh, these people could be amazing mentors, and so that they become mentors. So the mentorship piece for individual donors is really important. We also have our advisory board that all of the advisory board members are also funders, and obviously giving us, strategic advice and supporting us on programming and things like that. So the individuals, it's pretty obvious and clear because we are a mentor-driven program, and that connection is very, very important to us. But I'm not going to talk too much more about that, because I think that what we're really talking about here is institutional funders. And I'm going to talk also specifically about corporate funders like Bayer and many others. So our experience, it's our aspiration to diversify. We are a little overweight on the individual fundraisers, and we do want to diversify for a whole bunch of reasons. But the first and foremost is that we find the corporate partners that we have to be much more kind of flexible and dedicated to the mission. Not more, but very dedicated to the mission. And they often have a global footprint all around the world and can help to identify pipeline. They can help to support, help us find locally based organizations that are like-minded. Most of them are working at a slightly earlier stage of development than what we do. We tend to specialize in what was called the valley of death for social entrepreneurs. So once they've kind of come through, let's say locally basic incubators or accelerators, maybe they've won a challenge grant, $50,000 or $100,000, and then there's a big cliff before the impact investing space kind of kicks in after you're reaching maybe $1 million or $2 million in revenue. And so like we actually specialize in that middle piece and how to get entrepreneurs through that piece. So we are very dependent on our network of partnerships on the ground to help us identify entrepreneurs that can, really use the type of inputs that we have. So I think that's number one, leveraging the global footprint that many of these organizations have to help us identify partners and maybe even entrepreneurs. Although oftentimes it's the other way around. We're helping the corporates to find the entrepreneurs. That's one thing. The other thing is to increase our kind of visibility. So for instance, we have currently we have a multi-year support program with Chevron, and Chevron supported us to participate in AVPN conference. They came to the conference. They introduced us, I should say, Dee Burban, who's our contact there, who basically knows everyone in Asia, apparently. She's like an amazing networker, and she introduced us to all kinds of other potential partners. We met Peng, for instance, at the AVPN conference in Malaysia, and now we're having conversations. So I think introducing us to other people in their network. Another thing that's happening is here in San Francisco, there's going to be an APEC conference of leaders and CEOs and stuff. And Chevron has gotten us onto the agenda there as well. So that's something that we, for instance, never would have been able to achieve on our own. There's also a really important piece, another really important piece that we are looking for, which is to look beyond the kind of pure CSR agenda of the corporates, and to look for instance, connections to social procurement efforts, this is a new vector of growth for many of the entrepreneurs in our network, is to sell directly into the supply chains of big corporate players. And oftentimes the corporate foundations or the ESG or CSR stewards of that corporation are the ones who can help to make those introductions and to help to make those kinds of things happen. And so that's a very important, again, adding value to the entrepreneurs. And then finally, and this is this is a little bit controversial, I would say, in some ways, because many of the corporate partners are looking for opportunities for employee engagement. And that could be really great. So if some of the employees of a corporate entity can qualify as mentors under our mentorship program, that's amazing. I think that would be great. We welcome that. We're always looking for opportunities to grow our mentor network. And if, for instance, it's a company that has a lot of people who are experienced in investing, because we are an investment readiness accelerator, and they can support some of that investment readiness work that we're doing with the entrepreneurs, because that's their core area of expertise. That could be really interesting. We have mock investor panels as baked into our programming. We bring in people to kind of provide a safe space for the entrepreneurs to practice asking for, pitching for their next round of funding, whatever that might look like. But otherwise, we just have to be very careful to curate the experience for the entrepreneur to make sure whatever employee engagement is really adding value to the entrepreneur. So that's, we spend a lot of time and effort and energy and on the care and feeding of our mentor network to make sure that it's the highest possible quality and adding the most possible value. We have a similar kind of mechanism in place with the students at the university, because we offer opportunities for students to go and do internships and fellowships and things like that. But that's very much managed and quality control. So we would need to kind of develop that same type of thing to make sure that, the corporate engagement, employee engagement really makes sense from everyone's perspective. So I think that's probably enough to get started, but those are the areas where we have had some experience and where we have seen a lot of exciting developments.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. Some really important nuggets there just around mentorship, visibility. Would love to dive deeper about this missing middle stage that the Miller Center operates in, and then looking beyond the CSR agenda. So we're going to table some of those topics for when we do a more back and forth conversational exchange. But Priya, would love to turn it over to you. Vilgro has also been in the space for about 20 years, and you all have taken your incubation model globally. Was thrilled to see you kind of set up shop in the Philippines. But what's some support you all have received from your funders that has been more than money? And care to share some concrete examples?
Sure. Thanks so much, Rachel. I was like listening to what Bridget is saying and making all these quick notes, because I'm like, okay, I have to adopt all these things, because I have to be honest, when Ariel said this is the topic, and I was like, I don't think I have anything to say. I really just need, I'm still primarily, looking for funding, and I couldn't immediately recall anything. But, as we discussed and I was reflecting on what could be these, then I did come up with some examples, which I'll share. But I just wanted to share some context is that Vilgro is a brand that has been around for, close to 25 years. But Vilgro Philippines, which is an entity that I co-founded and which is the hub for our Southeast Asia work, is very new. And we do most of our fundraising independently. So it's not a country office per se. So moving to Southeast Asia, it was not as well known a brand. So it was about establishing a lot, but it helped us open doors because people would have heard of Vilgro. So it helped open sort of doors, and they start having conversations with funders. But I have to say, we're quite unique, quite at the starting stage compared to what Bridget was explaining, right? Is that most of our funders we've worked with for the first time in the region. And they also know us only for the first time. So these are new relationships, and now we have just past 4 years, and I would say only from 2020 that we actually started getting a lot more of these institutional funders or more, the bigger funders and the bigger contracts. So all of these relationships are new, and primarily because they're also getting to know us, it was around, like the deliverables of whatever it was, right? But as we have continued to work with many of these donors, and I think, we have primarily sort of two types, I would say. One is sort of the government aid arm, so USAID, DFAT, which is the Australian government, are two primary funders and specific groups within that. This is the first year we've actually had a local corporate funder, because it has been quite difficult to unlock local money to go into this missing middle work, because it's not sort of the most obvious, right? I mean, a lot of grant competition and a lot of investment work, but this is kind of a tough one, especially when it's in a young ecosystem. You have to sort of build the ecosystem. So a lot of the conversation is just about, okay, really, we need to fund this work. But we've been quite fortunate to also partner with some regional foundations who come, so in specific, I want to share my experience with the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, or SPF, who has really been a leader in gender lens investing in the region, have really been big proponents. And I think that's where we've aligned. Because, at Wilgrow Philippines, we sort of adopted a gender smart strategy and have really been championing women entrepreneurs and really been sort of setting up the work of gender lens investing in the Philippines and encouraging others to it. So there was a strong alignment. And so because of that, and we had a sort of a common mission to promote or evangelize a very new topic in the region around gender lens investing. I think our relationship has definitely gone beyond whatever is the program that they've been funding. And so specifically, for example, I think the Sasakawa Peace Foundation team actually sponsored a panel at the biggest sort of regional conference called ABPN. And so they actually brought together the organizations that they are funding to speak on this panel. Now, it seems like a simple thing, but unfortunately, the way that conferences are today, it's very difficult for a small organization like us with 10 people who are just starting out, just in our 4th year, having not made any big investments yet, and still doing sort of basic ecosystem building work to actually speak on a big panel there. So, and those opportunities, unfortunately, the way that the ecosystem is going is actually not being afforded to smaller incubators. It's quite hard to actually get a space to speak in a big conference, in a plenary. It almost never happens, right? Unless you are an international organization, either based out in the US or other Western countries, it's quite unlikely that we'll be on these stages. So I think their idea was really kind of to promote gender lens investing, and they wanted to kind of share experiences from the ground. And so it was sort of, our work, but also another incubator in Myanmar that was doing incredible work. And similarly, someone else from Indonesia. And I think, honestly, I never thought about it until Ariel asked me, maybe there are examples that you can share. And it was really quite an important one, because I think it was a space created to talk about, not only talk about our work, but actually advocate for a new thematic area in the ecosystem and have a really meaningful dialogue, but also present some really interesting, innovative things like the blended financing instruments that we are trying out, for example, in the Philippines. So I thought that was really invaluable. And it was very thoughtful. It was all expenses, covered for us to travel there, stay at the same hotel as where the conference is holding, because most likely you can't afford, it's a very expensive hotel, usually where conferences are at. So everything was paid for us. But most importantly, we got a really great slot. And I think at the end of the conference, it was, one of the most popular sessions that was actually held. And people really gave us great feedback, even on the conference app, which never happens. So I think it was really valuable. I think a second example I just wanted to share, Rachel, was working with the USA local office in the Philippines. We've actually together launched the first impact investment platform in the country. And impact investment is very new in the region. And so I think along with a lot of patients from the team, actually I just came back from some updates earlier this evening. It's actually been quite a struggle for us to get this platform to work and bringing, investors together to co-invest, take risk exactly in that valley of death stage that Bridget was referring to. It's also been quite difficult to actually get to just have more impact investors on the ground. So what they've really been helping us with is really with PR, and really kind of using the USAID sort of missionary and the local office missionary in helping us talk about the blended financing facility that we have, the small investments that we're making and how important that is. Because I think currently in a lot of young markets, I'm sure anybody else coming from a young ecosystem will know that this, of course, like everyone can understand pure philanthropy and everyone can understand sort of the commercial tech, startup investment, but this in-between stage and, doing very early stage impact investment is tough. And so I think even though, of course, like funding this platform and doing this is great, but actually they've been really actively helping us, advocate locally and trying to sort of build that credibility alongside us, even though we've just started doing it. So I think again, as I reflected, I was like, wow, these have really, really been helpful for us as a young incubator, trying to sort of build a coalition locally to really take this movement forward. And I think one thing is that it's maybe that even they don't realize, right, like sometimes how they can help us. And maybe even we don't realize, we don't have the experience to say, okay, maybe we can ask the funders for this more. Like in the example of the panel discussion, it was that they actually came up with the idea and they reached out. But in the case of the PR, we sort of said, okay, is there any way that maybe your comms team can help? And these were sort of organic, but I think, they're simple but powerful ways to engage, and I think it's been really as valuable for us as as the funding itself.
Excellent. And just want to double tap on something you said, Priya, that not undervaluing visibility and being able to amplify your work. And just so the audience can also take away a few nuggets here, not being afraid to ask as well. I think it was, fortuitous that they said, hey, we can give you this slot on a panel, but also as incubators and leaders of business support organizations, don't be afraid to ask. Would love to now turn it over to our funder. Lots of great perspective from our incubators around specific types of support. And Pang, would love to turn it over to you, representing a corporate, but also being an
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I can echo a lot from what Bridget and Priya said before, starting from the CSR part of work, employee engagement, etc., all the opportunities that the corporate foundation could bridge, and all the way to this visibility and networking question that Priya, you were saying. But maybe here I want to switch gear a little bit into this, what are we looking for, right, from accelerator, incubator. So I think a lot have been said, but this co-funding aspect is also something I want to emphasize. Yeah, I think there are our motivation, of course, is to get additional, co-funding to make the projects bigger. I mean, the depth of the value of depth is very deep, and one person cannot really, fix the gap. And we really need joint force with similar vision partners to do it together. But it's also not all about the money, right? I mean, joint force of funders together can generate a lot of additional benefits. Yeah. So, for example, due diligence. I think it's a very long process to really get through. And I think if we can share our trust, share the due diligence process among the funders, funder groups, I think that already adds a lot of value into the whole thing. Number two, investable pipelines. I mean, this is also, a bit in connection with the due diligence, but also broaden much more on the scouting effort, right? So you can really reach a lot more innovations where you didn't have the capacity to normally reach or even touch in your own ecosystem. And especially here, we rely on the regional partners to be able to identify the real diamond in the rough in many cases. So one example of such initiative is a community of practice for health. It's an initiative related to EVPA, so the sister organization of AVPN. So they also have European Philanthropy Network. So there's this initiative focusing on investing in health-related pipelines in sub-Saharan Africa so far. And it has been grown into more than 20 partners or members in this alliance. Yeah, so Bayer Foundation was one of the few first ones, and now it grew to a lot more together with Boehringer Ingelheim, also other large pharma companies. Very diverse portfolio of funders, and here I really see a lot of benefits of sharing the pipelines, right? So they have like quarterly pitch or so, yeah, among the funders. So the funder actually proactively promote some of their favorite partners and to get additional fundings from others. So it started from like 1 or 2 deals at the beginning, and people are still waiting to see whether it's really worth investing. But once you really can enhance a deal from 100,000 to 1 million, and people get excited, right? So they're like, oh yeah, this is very interesting. Maybe we can also double down another couple of hundred, and these things really grow. Yeah, so I think having this joint coalition of funders from the funder perspective in investing different accelerator incubator mechanism is really helpful. So just want to add this on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peng. And just to also expand on taking off my moderator hat, putting on my funder hat, absolutely, completely agree that for us, from sourcing to due diligence to even portfolio support, business support organizations have been critical to even finding and uncovering incredible entrepreneurs in geographies that we don't have a physical presence. So one thing that I would like to add to the conversation is this idea of proximity. And to circle back to Priya's point, the APAC region isn't as popular right now, but one of the value propositions I think that Vilgro Philippines has is that you are on the ground. And so for funders and investors who do not have a presence on the ground, you really become a trusted partner from sourcing to even due diligence in helping us understand opportunities and challenges. So Peng, staying with you, one thing we heard from Bridget is that there can sometimes be pressures when you are taking corporate money as an incubator or accelerator. Now, given what she said, how would you respond to that? And what are some concrete examples around how to provide a more flexible offering, non-financial, when it comes to partnering with organizations?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think in the Bayer Foundation, so every corporate foundation is managed differently. Yeah, so they can be very close to the corporate vision and or can be very distant and completely unrelated. And we see all different models, and also it's regulated by different countries and bylaws of the foundation. So for us, it's rather easy because we have a very strict bylaw regulated by German laws, and we cannot provide direct benefits to the companies, commercial benefits, right, to our mother corporate, which makes sometimes freedom to operate from ourselves. We just need to deliver to the overall company's sustainability goal. Yeah. But we have flexibility to do and regulated by the board of trustees of the foundation. So we're not pressured that much to generate value, let's say for employee engagement or providing the entrepreneurs for the employees to test and try, because that's indeed sometimes I think it's rather a burden than the help to the entrepreneurs, especially the very early stage entrepreneurs. They are not the showcase to the corporate to have good stories, and and it's a serious commitment, yeah, from both sides. And I really, we've seen good and bad examples out of different initiatives, and I think in the end it really boils down to it has to be a mutual match. It has to be a mutual commitment, yeah, and you have to take things really into a very serious going forward. So. For us, for the employee engagement piece, we have very good initiatives where we curated a lot from both sides, hand-picked matching of the employees where they could provide technical assistance. Yeah, but if we don't see that need, we also don't do just a random match to help the entrepreneurs for what we think is good for them, right? So this is something we don't do. And then I think one thing, for example, from Miller Center, which really caught our attention is the experience of the mentors, right? And you already mentioned, Bridget, they are all the people who ran the company before. So I think this is really a huge value added to the entrepreneurs when you really did some, startups or companies successfully by yourself, then you're able to coach entrepreneurs and have that credibility to help them scale. So I think was really one super great value that the Miller network of mentors could bring. From our perspective, it's really nice to have the employee engagement piece, but we only do it when it's generating, especially the values for the entrepreneurs. Then we go on with the handpicked initiative.
Excellent. Bridget?
Yeah,
Would love
I really want to talk about some of these topics. This is such a great conversation. I'd like to pick up a little bit because both Priya and I mentioned AVPN and our ability to participate in that network being facilitated by one of our funders. So I think that's a really interesting opportunity that many of the funders probably wouldn't think about. From our perspective, one of the main themes that we are working on this year is around how to build a more entrepreneur-centric ecosystem. Because what we have done, and you can even see it a little bit in this group, is that each one of us has our KPIs, each one of us has our strategies, very logical from the perspective of where we sit in the ecosystem. We have our theory of change, we have our investment thesis, we have our sectors, our geographies, our instruments. We've created what I sometimes refer to as a Frankenstein's monster of an ecosystem that is very difficult for the very entrepreneurs that we're all trying to support to navigate. And so in some ways, the enlightened kind of funders and supporters of this sector, like Bayer, like DRK and others, can help to solve that problem through the kind of mechanisms that Priya is talking about, and that you were talking about, Rachel, about like, how might we work together to create a seamless continuum of support and access to the right flavor of capital for the entrepreneurs. And I think that if we could work with funders to understand that problem at the systemic level, we could unlock all kinds of value. Because the other piece is that the entrepreneurs that do navigate the system are the ones who already have networks often and already have resources. And they're, so we're all talking to the same, group. So to get to that next level, that discovery piece that you talked about, being on the ground, understanding, seeing, like opening the tent, broadening the range of entrepreneurs that we're engaging with. Maybe they don't speak English. Maybe they don't, have a certain kind of access. They didn't go to, the certain universities, whatever it is. So I think that is the crucial challenge of our time right now as a sector. And the only way we're going to do that is to work together. And the only way we're going to be able to work together more effectively is if we get support from our funders to do it. Because right now, that's not really the way a lot of the funding is structured. So I think that kind of connecting the dots, putting the entrepreneur at the center and the entrepreneur journey at the center of everything that we do is absolutely crucial. So that's one thing I want to say. And then this other thing about sharing due diligence and stuff, I think this is a brilliant idea. It's very difficult to operationalize, really, really difficult to operationalize, because at the end of the day, everybody sort of still wants to do their own due diligence, right? And so I think hopefully we're getting closer to something like that. My daughter's applying for colleges right now here in the US, and they have this thing called the Common Application. And almost all the universities in the US will accept that application. Some of them also ask for a few more things. But I'm thinking, if we had a common app that a critical mass of funders in this space could agree to say, like, look, no matter what, we're all going to ask for this stuff. It would, and then maybe we need a little bit extra here or there, but anyway, so that's, I think, a really, really valuable idea and a non-financial kind of commitment that the funders can make to the ecosystem as a whole. Maybe it's not to each individual one. And yeah, so that's it. I wanted to just mention those two kind of concepts.
Looks like we have a question coming in about due diligence, and I just wanted to add some color around how we at DRK lean on some of the incubators and accelerators for DD. Pretty straightforward to operationalize from our perspective. So due diligence for us is not a data room, right? Due diligence also means, do you know this entrepreneur? What has been your experience working with them? What are some of the key leadership challenges that they're facing? Because the reality is, when you're early stage investing, the hard-coded stuff will likely change, but what won't is understanding relationships and potential. So one of the approaches that we give that give kudos to the Miller Center is diligence as it relates to growth potential, entrepreneurs, what has been your experience working with them? So just wanted to give that little nugget to our incubators as well. And hope that helps to answer Juan's question. Priya, wanted to kick it over to you. If
sure.
you want to be mindful of time as well. If you could have a short list of your top 5 funders that you are either pursuing right now or want to pursue, what would be your specific asks around non-financial support? Money, obvious. What else would you ask them for?
Yeah. So I think, I want to touch on this very important piece of due diligence, because I think that's one piece. Is that many times, I think, like Bridget, I feel like, we speak the same language, my soul sister, everything that you said, I totally agree with, because I think that's, for me, leveling the playing field is really the challenge. I think we've created some microcosms of where things are working, but it is like many things in capitalism, it's not actually getting to everyone. And so how do we do that? And I think one of the big barriers, Rachel, that I do see is that, the silos, right? And sometimes we do need, even though we all talk to each other, we do need someone to bring us together. And these coalitions and collaboration building requires a lot of time and mind space to create. And it has been difficult. And I think that's one definite role that funders can play, because they're probably also working with similar types of organizations solving the same problem in multiple ecosystems, and we can all learn from each other. And sometimes, even though we may know each other from afar, we don't actually co-create and share and sort of bring these learnings together to kind of leapfrog some of these big challenges that we have to currently solve. So I think that's definitely one area that, we are trying to do that in our own way, even though we're not really a funder. And I wanted to kind of share a platform that we've created for shared due diligence. And we have 20 investors who are actually sharing due diligence on enterprises and going through, and it takes a lot of effort. And it's a role, and it's only because we're also playing that role. And it is going beyond sort of any funding. It really is just for the sake of the ecosystem. But I think it really helps if, probably somebody other than me was doing this, right? Like a funder who's really influential can really bring, I think it would have happened much faster. I have slogged for 3 years to get a few deals through shared due diligence. So, and I don't think the ecosystem has so much time. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there around this big piece that all of us talked about. And so for me, it's that. I think there are a few pieces. I think there is definitely two big things, I think, that can happen that maybe individual incubators may not be able to do. And I think one is, number one, what we need, especially in, I would say, in my region, Southeast Asia and the APAC region, is that we actually need the stories of role models. And this is something that I think funders can do very well, and it's what they love to do, right? Actually tell the stories from the ground. But somehow we haven't seen so much of that, because it also means data collection and actually, sending maybe a crew on the ground and things like that. But I think it'll be so wonderful if we can actually tell the stories of the entrepreneurs at a larger scale, because, I would love to do it, and I'm doing it in my small way, but I definitely don't have the funding to do it. And, if, for example, that is something, an add-on value that some of the funders that we are working with can actually help us do, I think that would be super. Because what we really need is to show the ecosystem that there are success stories from Southeast Asia, and that social entrepreneurs can scale up, because we actually haven't had many models scale up yet. So we are really struggling. And probably, Rachel, you were so right when you said, okay, Southeast Asia is not really positioned as the exciting market, but we have a lot of human beings here, and it is where a lot of the problems, the most vulnerable region for climate change. So there's a lot of work that needs to be, that is going on the ground, but needs a lot more support. And we would really benefit from more storytelling from the ground and showcasing of models, I think. And the last thing that I will say is the other piece is really sort of even an impact assessment of all the good work done by ESOs. I don't think we actually know what even others are doing in the space. And so these shared learnings and that being shared out, I think this is, again, a role that funders can do. I think for us in this region, we are looking for, gender lens aligned funders and partners. And so that would be both, I would say, private foundations as well as sort of, more government and aid agencies who are interested. Because sometimes there's a lot of noise around gender, X climate, all this, we have, there are all these, it's all the new buzzwords and things, but, there's some basic ecosystem building that needs to happen. And I think what I'm struggling with is that, unfortunately, there's a trend in this region that every year you have to do something new. But actually, we don't need to do new. We just need to do the thing to deepen and build that continuum of support. And I think that's the tricky one, I think, because most things have already been done in Africa and India. So everybody wants something new. And unfortunately, what we need in the region is not new. We actually just need to build deeper and faster to build a more inclusive ecosystem. And that's finding it a little bit hard to get support for that.
Excellent points, Priya. Excellent points. I think that pivots nicely into a question we have from Roshni. Roshni, we don't have any DFIs exclusively represented on the panel, but her question is really around asking for outcomes measurement for enterprise support organizations. And I want to also flag something that Bridget mentioned when we were catching up before, trust-based philanthropy. So Roshni's question around, should funders be less stringent as it relates to outcomes reporting, measurement, and how does that dovetail into this idea of trust-based philanthropy? And to your point, Priya, just letting the organizations do what they need to do. So I'll pause there, but feel free to jump in, any of you, Pang included.
Pang, do you have something you want to add on that topic? I have a few things to say, but
maybe just very quickly, I think, for the outcome measurement, there's so many things we can measure, right? I think a lot of accelerators like to say how much funding they are further, be able to attract, but we also know it's not only about funding, but, if you're able to change or scale a model, Priya, like you said, right? This is successful stories or a how many business model you're able to generate or scale. I mean, all these type of measurement can also count into the funder perspective. At least we are searching for these examples. And also operationally, right? So like how many sessions, how many coaching, mentoring sessions you've had, how many satisfaction rate do you have from your entrepreneurs going through the accelerator? So all these measures we also consider as the outcome, because you are indeed changing the life of the entrepreneurs. You're able to help them to scale something. Yeah. So not beyond money for sure. But Bridget, you also want to add a few points.
Yeah, so I have actually worked for IFC for some years. I've worked for DFIs and like I said, I've been on all sides of this table. And I do think that especially the international organizations and the government oriented, donors, they have, let's say, a more stringent approach to impact measuring and monitoring. And I think this is the key distinction to make here, and it does link into the trust-based support, right? Is to think about impact measurement. There's two ways of thinking about it. Well, probably more than that, but two ways that I think about it. So there's one that's like to prove impact to funders or donors, and to kind of justify your existence and all that stuff. And then there's the other, which is to improve the impact that you're having and that the entrepreneurs are having. And I think that the challenge is for the funders to identify organizations that have clear metrics for themselves that are going to improve the impact that they're having on the ground, maybe along the lines of what Peng was talking about or others, and then align, their support and funding to whatever it is that they are already doing and already reporting on. And we've been extremely lucky, I would say, over the past several years. I'd say the past 3 years since we've been executing on our new strategy, is to come out and say, okay, this is what we want to achieve. We've got 3 top line KPIs that everything we do is driving towards one of those 3 things. And the funders that are interested in working with us are interested in those things as well. And that we're able to pretty much slot in the support to what it is that we overall want to achieve, as opposed to getting pulled into 10,000 different directions on special projects that are driven by the donors and measured by the donors with their each like very specific indicators that they're tracking. So I think, it's on us on a certain level as well, to say, to be clear, to have a clear strategy, to have clear indicators, and to present to the various funders that clarity, and they'll either want it or not. And then obviously there's going to be negotiation and co-creation and, and compromise and all that stuff along the way. I'm not saying, that we're going to be rigid about it, but I think that is the key piece, is to really find those partners that are already aligned, as opposed to trying to twist yourself into a pretzel to, to measure something that doesn't make sense fundamentally for who you are.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Want to be mindful of time, but wanted to open it up to the audience for maybe one more question before we pass it over to Ariel for a roundup. Any other questions from the audience and participants?
Well, Priya, did you want to give any last comment? It looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, I was saying, I was just thinking about what we were discussing right before this, and saying if the funders did want to bring Matt Damon or Leonardo DiCaprio to a panel or a discussion, we are very, very open. But, I just wanted to, share on this. I think the reporting requirements, I think, Rachel, I was just reading your point, and I hope that there will be progress on this, because I think this continues to be a challenge, because a lot of incubator accelerator programs are shorter. They are 1 year, or, many people who have multi-year funding maybe can do multi-year sort of support. But in a short 1 year, it's quite difficult to report back on outcomes, because you can only kind of share. Even revenue changes sometimes is difficult, because maybe they didn't have revenue and then they just started having, right? So the marginal sort of reporting the outcome that we can measure is quite minimal. And there isn't always a lot of funding or support for actually doing that, collecting the data the following year to see how the company has performed, because actually probably that's when they've started creating the impact. And I think that I find always challenging. And I don't know what's the solution to it, but I think that's what we always find difficult. So going back to Roshni's question, maybe it is that flexible funding bucket where we actually do have a follow-on funding, right, a year after, to actually go back and sort of do an end-line assessment. Because doing it at the end of the incubation or accelerator program is always sort of challenging. But even if the funder themselves want to do it directly, that's also okay. But I think that's probably the only way that we can tackle this, because the truth is that when you work at the stage that we are doing, which is in this sort of value to death stage, those who do make it out a year later is the only time we'll know if they've succeeded, not necessarily at graduation or coming out of the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we have a 3-year window. So what we do is all of our metrics are within 3 years of graduating or coming out of one of our programs. We track, and because we have programs, both the accelerator program and then we also have alumni solutions. So we continue to accompany the entrepreneurs for as long as they want. So in order to get access to the alumni solutions, where we serve about 100 entrepreneurs a year with those programs, so people already in the network, continuing to help them with more bespoke and specialized support. In order to get access to that, they need to report on their data to us. So this is kind of like the mutually beneficial kind of thing that we're doing, and we're only looking for those 3 years. We're not looking for ever and ever in their life. So it kind of helps to focus ourselves on like what's the window of impact that we're continuing to track. But you're absolutely right. It's very difficult because a lot of what we do today won't really show up in terms of concrete numbers or things, or even stories to tell for some time afterwards, when they start to, get funding from DRK or have, other kinds of experiences.
And I think most of us as young incubators, we don't have multi-year funding. So, we'll have to do this at our own cost, which may not be possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just wanted to add, another tenet of trust-based philanthropy is actually unrestricted multi-year grant giving. So encourage those that aren't familiar with the concept to dive a bit deeper. But these are conversations that are currently trending and being had in a lot of donor circles. Great. So before we formally close, would love to turn it over to Ariel.
Thank you, Rachel, Priya, Bridget, Peng. I cannot believe like the level of energy that is coming out of this conversation, and especially like we're going from like 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So thank you all, and Peng as well. I mean, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation, and also just picking up on so many themes that we've heard in the last couple of days, not just around trust, but around knowing what your focus area is. Bridget, you touched on that. Priya, knowing what to ask for and being open to asking for it. I think you and Rachel also mentioned that, and Peng, also just around being the willingness to share information and share some of that information. So thank you all so much. I know we are over time, but I don't think anybody was bothered because the conversation was so fantastic. As I mentioned when we started, this potluck series is really just the start for us, and these conversations and these insights are really, directing the kind of action that we're going to be taking over the next couple of months. So thank you so much for this, and we're really relying on these incubators and accelerators to kind of lead, and we will follow and support in the avenues that make the most sense. So we just have a quick poll that we wanted to push out. Thank you, Shami. We just want to know how we can engage with you all in the future. You'll see in the poll a bunch of activities that we are already rolling out, or we will be rolling out over the next couple of months. So if any of these sound interesting to you, please let us know. We'll follow up. We're going to get some working groups kicked off and some focus group discussions on a number of things that came up in today's conversation. So it's really reinforcing a lot of sort of hypotheses that we've had. And while we kind of let that up and let you guys respond, we just have a quick video that we wanted to share about the journey of Pollinate Impact and where we've kind of come from in the last year or so. If you still have pressing questions for our lovely ladies here, feel free to stick on. If they have a few more minutes and they're not too tired, or Bridget doesn't need another cup of coffee, Rachel fortunately is inside. It's raining here in Nairobi, so we're dry and it's not too late. But they can stay on for maybe a few more minutes and ask any additional questions we have. If you have to drop off, thank you. But I'll hand it over so that we can take a look at the quick video. Thanks, Tassim.
It is estimated that more than 7,500 incubators and over 3,000 accelerators operate globally. Social impact incubators play a vital role in supporting and nurturing social enterprises. However, incubators struggle to gain visibility or the credibility needed to access consistent funding, and the incubation industry has yet to achieve recognition as a fully established industry.
We often face the same challenges related to things like strategic growth, team management, financial sustainability, etc.
Impact incubators lack a space in which they can promote a shared understanding of best practices in their work.
Two of the challenges that I think are really important for incubators to try to overcome are staffing and related to funding.
To understand the incubation industry better and to arrive at the best possible solution, we interviewed more than 50 social impact leaders from around the world, including entrepreneurs, incubators, accelerators, funders, investors, and researchers, and here's what they had to say.
By creating a network where knowledge sharing is open, where there's an openness to understand from each other's mistakes and successes.
And there's something so supportive about having this kind of community that can enable you to troubleshoot these issues, and that really helps you to focus more on this impact piece alongside the incubation that we're doing.
By bringing together the stakeholders in this network, we hope to create a larger picture of the whole and the part that each of them is playing in this.
And this is why impact leaders from across the globe came together to design a global network of impact incubators to build Pollinate Impact.
Pollinate Impact is a member-driven network of social impact incubators,
where we aim to create a thriving, resilient, and mutually supportive ecosystem for impact incubators across the global south.
We believe that by empowering, resourcing, and enabling these impact enablers,
we can collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing the people and the planet.
Pollinate Impact is an avenue for impact incubators to connect, collaborate, and co-create a bigger impact.
In essence, we celebrate the pollination of impact.
This network has been co-designed by a group of social impact leaders, representing incubators, entrepreneurs, academia, foundations, and networks. One word that comes to mind when you think of Pollinate Impact:
synergy, amplification,
community,
collaboration,
openness.
Join us on this inspiring journey. Together, we will solve the challenges facing people and the planet.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tassin. So thank you again. Huge thank you to our speakers. And if anybody has any more questions, and thanks, Nick, I see you shared some resources that are new to some of us, not just Priya, but also myself. So thanks for sharing that. If you all have any more questions, feel free to stay on, unmute, turn your video on. We'd love to see you and hear from you. We do have some awesome sessions tomorrow. We have a pitch to funders. We have 2 incubators that are going to be in the hot seat. So if you're an incubator and you want to get some insights on what funders are looking for and how they kind of pick apart the pitches to funders, please join that. And then we have a no-nonsense incubator to incubator advice session happening on Thursday, which we're also really excited about. So feel free to join us for any of those conversations. Otherwise, if you have to drop off, have a lovely evening, morning, day, afternoon, whatever time it is. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If our speakers can stick around, they'll answer them. Otherwise, we'll sign off. But thank you all so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day or night.